Carter stepped off the transport vehicle onto the hot, dusty tarmac of Fort, North Carolina, feeling a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. The early morning sun cut through the haze, casting long shadows across the rows of camouflaged tents and the glinting metal of military vehicles. She clutched her duffel bag tightly, aware that every eye was on her, some curious, some skeptical, and some coldly indifferent. She was a small-town girl from rural Texas, barely 22, who had spent her life dreaming of something bigger than herself. And now she had finally made it into one of the most elite sniper units in the U.S. Army. Had always been fascinated by precision and patience. In her childhood, she spent countless hours on her family's farm, learning to shoot at cans and bottles with an old rifle her father had given her. It wasn't about violence. It was about focus, discipline, and the calm control required to hit a target dead center. That same dedication had carried her through boot camp, where she had been neither the fastest nor the strongest, but always the most meticulous in her training exercises. Now in this new, high-stakes environment, she knew she was the recruit, a rookie in a unit full of hardened veterans. The challenge was intimidating, but her resolve burned bright. As she walked toward the main barracks, noticed the subtle interactions among the soldiers. Some exchanged nods and brief smiles, while others whispered in small clusters, their eyes flicking toward her in quiet judgment. Sergeant Blake, the unit's grizzled leader, watched from a distance. His face was carved from years of experience and hardened discipline, had heard stories of his precision in combat and his unyielding standards. He didn't smile easily, and his approval was earned, not given. She had read the dossiers and mission briefings. She knew that earning his respect would be her first and most critical test. Inside the barracks, the room smelled of gun oil, leather, and hard-worn canvas. Bunks lined the walls, each meticulously arranged, with weapons clean to a shine. Quickly found a space in the corner, unpacking her gear with precision, checking each piece twice, as if the act itself could protect her from the scrutiny she felt pressing down on her. She noticed a few soldiers glancing up, some curious, some judgmental. One of them, a wiry man with a sharp jawline and piercing eyes, muttered under his breath, "Fresh meat." Let it slide. There was no room for ego. She had to prove herself with action, not words. Her first day was a whirlwind of introductions, protocol briefings, and weapons checks. She felt the weight of the rifle in her hands, heavier than the training models back home, yet perfectly balanced. Sergeant Blake approached her during a brief lull, his eyes narrowing slightly as he observed her stance and grip. "Carter," he said, voice gruff but not unkind, "we'll see if you have what it takes." Being a sniper isn't about shooting. It's about patience, discipline, and the ability to remain invisible until the moment matters. "You understand?" Nodded, swallowing her nerves. "Yes, Sergeant." The simplicity of his words hid a lifetime of deadly experience. During lunch, sat alone at the edge of the mess hall, watching the veterans exchange stories of past operations, missions that tested their nerve and skill in unforgiving terrain. The weight of the stories was palpable and felt both awe and intimidation. Private, a young soldier only slightly older than her, slid into the seat across from her. "Don't worry about them," he whispered. "They respect results, not chatter. Just focus on what you can control." Smiled faintly, grateful for the small gesture of solidarity. She knew she had allies, even if the majority were skeptical. That evening slipped out of the barracks to practice alone. The base was quiet, the sounds of distant drills fading into the night. She set up a small target, a makeshift silhouette, and practiced breathing, sight alignment, and trigger control. Hours passed unnoticed. Her mind became a rhythm, her body a steady instrument of precision. With every shot, she felt a spark of confidence, a tiny affirmation that perhaps she belonged here. But doubt lingered in the corners of her mind, whispering reminders of her inexperience and the harsh reality of what lay ahead. As the night deepened, she sat under the stars, rifle across her lap, thinking about the mission briefings she had seen earlier. Intelligence reports had indicated that the enemy squad in her next deployment was ruthless, highly trained, and notorious for ambushes. Civilians had already suffered because of their actions. Stomach twisted at the thought, but determination surged stronger than fear. She had joined the army not for glory, but to make a difference, to protect lives, and to rise to a level of skill where she could be trusted to make the critical difference. By the time the first light of dawn touched the horizon, felt a quiet shift inside her. The rookie who had stepped off the transport hours ago was no longer just nervous or unsure. She was aware of the immense challenge ahead, aware of her vulnerabilities, and yet ready to embrace them as opportunities to grow. She cleaned her rifle one last time, packed her gear, and prepared to face her first day of serious training with the unit. Sergeant Blake's eyes caught hers across the training ground, and though he said nothing, there was a hint of acknowledgement. Carter was no longer just a girl from a small Texas town. She was a rookie in a unit that demanded excellence, precision, and courage beyond her years. And though the road ahead would test her limits in ways she could not yet imagine, she was determined to rise, to learn, and, one day, to prove that even a rookie could change the tide of battle. The sun barely crested the horizon when Carter found herself on the training grounds, rifle slung across her shoulder, heart racing with anticipation. Today wasn't just about drills or routines. It was the first real test of her ability to operate as a sniper in live conditions. Sergeant Blake's eyes followed her every move as the group of veterans assembled, their faces a mixture of curiosity and mild skepticism. His fingers tightened around her rifle. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like the Texas heat. The morning began with physical exercises designed to push them to the limits. Crawling through mud, balancing across beams, and maintaining stealth over rough terrain demanded every ounce of endurance. Muscles burned, sweat soaked her uniform, and blisters formed on her hands from gripping the rifle. She bit back complaints, forcing her mind to focus on the rhythm of movement, the synchronization of breath and motion. Each step had to be deliberate, each gesture silent. She wasn't the fastest, but she was determined to be precise, meticulous, and unflinching. By midday, the training shifted to marksmanship and tactical observation. The veterans set up targets at varying distances, some exposed, some partially obscured by simulated terrain. Studied every detail, the angle of the sun, the rustling of leaves, the slight sway of targets. Sergeant Blake moved silently behind her, observing her posture, her grip, her breathing. "Slow down," he muttered gruffly when her impatience caused a slight misalignment. Inhaled deeply, refocusing. Her first shot missed the center by a hair's breadth. She cursed at herself quietly, wiped the sweat from her brow, and tried again. The next shot hit dead center. A small, private victory, but it was enough to lift the weight off her shoulders. Private, noticing her moment of triumph, offered a quiet grin. "See, you've got it. Just trust yourself." Nodded, grateful for the brief moment of solidarity. The rest of the afternoon was spent moving through terrain courses, communicating silently with teammates, observing mock enemy positions, and coordinating movements under pressure. Each exercise emphasized patience and observation rather than speed. Realized that her advantage wasn't brute strength. It was attention to detail, and the ability to remain calm under stress. As the day wore on, the real test loomed. A reconnaissance mission simulation in a controlled but challenging environment. His team had to locate a hostile squad and report positions without being detected. The simulated enemies were aggressive and clever, requiring the rookies to think like predators, not prey. Positioned herself behind a ridge, scanning the area with binoculars, heart thumping as she mapped enemy movements in her mind. Hours passed, her focus unwavering. Her hands ached, but she barely noticed. She was learning to anticipate, predict, and remain invisible in plain sight. A sudden shout in the distance startled the group. The simulated enemy had spotted a team member. Panic flared briefly, but calm focus helped guide another soldier to reposition safely. Her observations and quiet guidance proved critical. Sergeant Blake, who had been monitoring silently, finally allowed himself a small nod. It wasn't praise exactly, but it carried weight. Realized she was starting to gain not just skill, but the trust of those around her. The sun began to dip low, casting long shadows over the training ground. Exhausted but determined, crawled back to the base, her uniform smeared with dirt and sweat, rifle still at the ready. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of confidence beyond nervous hope. She had survived the day, performed under pressure, and contributed meaningfully to her team. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. The lessons of patience, precision, and stealth would be put to far higher tests in real combat, where mistakes carried a price far beyond bruises or reprimands. That night, as cleaned her rifle by the dim light of the barracks, she thought about the upcoming overseas mission. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture of a ruthless enemy squad. Civilians had already suffered because of them, and knew that her actions, once deployed, could directly impact lives. She studied maps, memorized enemy patterns, and reviewed her notes from the day's training. Every detail mattered. Every small decision could be the difference between life and death. She whispered a quiet vow to herself. She would be ready. Carter was no longer just a rookie fumbling through exercises. With each calculated breath, each measured shot, each silent observation, she edged closer to becoming the soldier she had always dreamed of being. A sniper capable of changing the course of a mission, even from a hidden ridge, with nothing but patience, skill, and unwavering determination. The sun rose cold and gray over the training compound, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Carter tightened her boots, adjusted her rifle, and walked toward the obstacle course with a weight in her chest heavier than her gear. Overnight, whispers of doubt had echoed in her mind. Some veterans questioned whether she truly belonged, whether a rookie like her could survive even the simplest engagement. She tried to push the fear aside, but each skeptical glance from her peers reminded her that earning respect here would not be easy. During morning drills, struggled to match the speed and efficiency of the veteran snipers. Each movement felt clumsy, every maneuver slower than it should be. One exercise in particular, moving undetected through uneven terrain while observing enemy targets, highlighted her inexperience. A momentary misstep caused a small noise, alerting the simulated enemy to her presence. The instructors called a halt. His face burned with embarrassment. She wanted to vanish, to sink into the dust, yet she refused. Retreat was not an option. Private approached during a break, his face serious but supportive. "Don't let them shake you," he whispered. "You're not here to compete with them, you're here to prove yourself. Focus on your strengths, not their doubts." Nodded, grateful for his quiet encouragement. She knew he was right. Speed would never be her strength, but patience, observation, and calculated precision could make her indispensable. Still, doubts lingered like shadows, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. By midday, Sergeant Blake assembled the team for a new tactical exercise, one designed to simulate real combat conditions more closely than anything had faced. The mission was to observe and report enemy movements from a concealed vantage point while maintaining stealth. Any mistake could compromise the entire team. His pulse quickened as they moved into the dense terrain, each soldier a shadow among shadows. She scanned every detail, leaves rustling in the wind, the subtle angle of sunlight, the faint trail of footprints. Her mind raced, cataloging patterns, predicting paths, calculating risks. Hours passed and remained focused, yet exhaustion and self-doubt crept in. The veterans moved with practiced ease, while she questioned every decision. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest when a simulated enemy patrol passed within yards, oblivious to her presence. One wrong move and they could have been discovered. Hands shook slightly as she adjusted her rifle, but she held her nerve. With each successful observation, she felt a spark of confidence. Her skills were improving, and she realized that perseverance was as important as raw talent. After the exercise, Sergeant Blake approached her, expression unreadable. "You've got potential, Carter," he said bluntly. "But potential isn't enough. Every decision in the field counts. Hesitation can cost lives." Swallowed, nodding. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her. He wasn't offering comfort, he was issuing a warning. That night, sat alone by the barracks, studying maps and memorizing enemy positions from intelligence reports. Each detail mattered. She knew that the real test wouldn't come in exercises. It would come overseas, in situations where a single mistake could be fatal. The threat of the enemy squad weighed heavily on her mind. Reports described them as ruthless, efficient, and unpredictable, an ever-present danger to civilians and soldiers alike. Imagined herself in their line of sight, her heart hammering at the thought. But she refused to let fear dominate her actions. She practiced long into the night, refining her stance, controlling her breathing, and visualizing successful missions. Slowly, the rookie who had stumbled through drills began transforming. Each mistake became a lesson, each correction a step toward the disciplined sniper she aspired to be. By the early hours of dawn, finally felt a quiet shift within her. Doubts still lingered, but they no longer paralyzed her. She understood that being a sniper meant balancing fear with focus, hesitation with decisiveness. She had survived the harsh scrutiny of her peers, faced her own insecurities, and discovered that resilience and patience could rival experience. The real mission still awaited, and she knew the stakes would be higher, the dangers more immediate. Yet Carter felt ready, not just to follow orders, but to think, act, and protect lives with precision and unwavering determination. The order came just as the sun broke over the horizon, spilling pale light across the base. Carter's stomach twisted, with a mix of anticipation and fear. The mission brief was clear. Her sniper team was to neutralize a highly trained enemy squad that had been terrorizing civilian populations in a volatile region overseas. The stakes were no longer simulations or exercises. Failure could cost lives. She felt the weight of responsibility press against her chest, heavier than any rifle or gear she had carried before. Sergeant Blake gathered the team in a dimly lit room, maps and satellite images spread across the table. His voice was low, precise, every word deliberate. "We move at dawn. The enemy squad is organized, ruthless, and unpredictable. Your orders are to observe, report, and if necessary, neutralize threats. Precision and patience are your only friends." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the rookies, lingering on. She felt her pulse quicken. The eyes of the unit, trained for battle, now regarded her with the quiet curiosity of soldiers on the verge of deployment. Meticulously checked her equipment, confirming the balance of her sniper rifle, the alignment of her scope, and the placement of extra rounds. Her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and resolve. She had trained for this, visualized it countless times, yet the reality of stepping into hostile territory was a new kind of challenge. Every sound seemed amplified, the hum of engines, the creak of boots on metal, the distant cries of soldiers in training exercises. Her mind replayed every lesson, every tactical principle Sergeant Blake had drilled into her. Patience, concealment, observation, precision. The team moved out under the cover of pre-dawn shadows, vehicles carrying them toward the extraction point. Eyes scanned constantly, mapping terrain, nodding cover, and visualizing lines of sight. She whispered coordinates to in hushed tones, guiding him as they approached the drop zone. Even the smallest detail mattered. A tree branch brushing the ground, a flicker of movement in the distance, a shadow shifting in the wind. Each observation sharpened her focus and reminded her of the fragile balance between success and disaster. Hours passed as the team traversed rugged terrain, moving with the precision of predators. Remained behind, crouched behind a ridge, rifle steady, scanning the enemy's patrol routes. Her muscles ached from long hours of crouching, yet she remained motionless, her breathing synchronized with the wind. Each soldier's movement was a puzzle she had to solve, each detail a potential lifeline. Sergeant Blake's silent nod from across the ridge reminded her that she wasn't alone, that every observation she made had value. The enemy squad finally appeared, a group of well-armed, disciplined soldiers moving in formation, unaware of the silent observer above them. His pulse quickened, but fear was tempered by focus. She traced their paths with her eyes, noting patterns, pauses, and potential vulnerabilities. Whispered positions and possible cover points. His mind cataloged every detail. This was the moment her training and preparation would be tested, not against a simulated target, but against live lethal opponents whose awareness could mean the difference between life and death. As daylight strengthened, realized the enemy had unknowingly walked into a kill zone, perfectly framed by the ridge and natural cover she occupied. She adjusted her scope, breath steadying, mind focused like a laser. Every decision mattered. The angle, the distance, the wind, the timing. One wrong move and she could jeopardize the mission and her team's lives. Yet within the tension, she felt a surge of confidence. This was her moment to prove herself, not as a rookie, but as a sniper capable of controlling life and death with precision. Hours stretched into an eerie silence as the team maintained position, the enemy unaware of the observer above. His mind cycled through contingencies, anticipating every move, imagining every potential outcome. For the first time, the reality of combat pressed against her fully, not as a distant scenario, but as an imminent, inescapable reality. Her pulse remained steady, hands firm on the rifle. The mission had begun, and Carter was ready to rise beyond her rookie status. Carter's heart pounded in rhythm with the distant movements of the enemy squad below. From her concealed perch atop the ridge, every muscle in her body coiled like a spring. The wind whispered across her face, carrying the faint scent of earth and vegetation, and she adjusted her scope with painstaking precision. Sergeant Blake's eyes, sharp and unblinking, watched silently from a nearby tree line, offering no guidance. This moment was hers alone. She had trained for this countless times, but the difference now was palpable. These were not simulations or exercises. Every move, every shot could mean the difference between life and death, for her team, and for the civilians whose safety depended on the success of this mission. Fingers tightened on the trigger, feeling the familiar weight of her rifle. Breathing slowed, focus sharpened. Time seemed to stretch as the enemy squad moved with careless confidence, unaware that a silent observer had locked onto their every action. One soldier moved slightly ahead of the others, glancing around with the casual vigilance of a professional who had not yet sensed the predator above. Traced his path carefully, accounting for distance, wind, and the subtle sway of his movement. She exhaled slowly, visualizing the shot. Sergeant Blake's presence behind her was a silent reassurance, a reminder that she was not alone even in this high-stakes moment. Every second stretched as mind calculated trajectory, breathing, and timing. Then the opportunity came, a perfect alignment of target and terrain. His finger tightened on the trigger. Her first shot rang out, silent to the enemy thanks to the suppressor, but deadly in effect. The soldier crumpled to the ground, caught completely off guard. The enemy squad froze, confusion and alarm rippling through their formation. His pulse surged with adrenaline, but she remained focused, scanning for any sign that they had located her position. Her hands, though trembling slightly with intensity, held the rifle steady. Another movement, another opportunity. Took a second shot, eliminating a soldier who had moved toward cover. Chaos erupted among the remaining enemy combatants, their coordinated formation fracturing into panic. Straining kicked in, forcing her to stay calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Each decision was deliberate, where to aim, when to fire, and how to remain concealed. The ridge provided perfect cover, and her careful observation allowed her to anticipate the enemy's every reaction. From a distance, whispered coordinates and observed movements, guiding as if she were a seasoned veteran. Sergeant Blake's occasional nods were quiet affirmations of her skill. Felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and fear, the thrill of precision matched by the grim reality of the consequences. This was war. Every shot meant lives were changing in an instant. Yet within the tension, felt herself rise to the moment. The rookie who had stumbled through training now acted with lethal purpose and clear focus. Minutes stretched like hours, remained hidden, taking measured shots at any enemy who ventured too close or attempted to regroup. Her mind remained clear, her breathing controlled. The enemy squad's panic grew with each precise strike, confusion rippling through their ranks. His team watched in awe, realizing that the young rookie was not merely participating. She was dictating the engagement, turning fear and chaos into opportunity. As the last enemy soldier retreated behind cover, exhaled, realizing the mission's tide had shifted. She had fired her first shots in real combat, and each one had been a calculated, deadly decision. Her body ached from tension, her eyes strained from hours of focus, yet a quiet satisfaction settled over her. She had survived, excelled, and earned the unspoken respect of Sergeant Blake and her team. The rookie was no longer uncertain. She had become a sniper who could control life and death with her skill, patience, and courage. Lowered her rifle briefly, scanning the remaining enemy positions. The first engagement was over, but the mission was far from complete. Her hands still shook slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline and gravity of the moment. She had crossed a threshold, from trainee to combat sniper, and nothing would ever make her see herself as a rookie again. The battlefield had tested her, and she had passed. The battlefield fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the distant shuffle of retreating enemy forces. Carter crouched behind the ridge, her rifle steady, eyes scanning the terrain. Her heart pounded, not with fear but with sharp awareness. The enemy squad had been fractured but not eliminated. Some had regrouped, moving cautiously toward cover, searching for the sniper who had decimated their formation. Every twitch of a leaf, every shadow of movement demanded attention. Pulse synced with her breathing, slow, deliberate, controlled. Patience had become her greatest weapon. Private whispered observations from a nearby tree line, tracking enemy movements and suggesting tactical options. Responded with calculated precision, adjusting her scope, measuring distances, and anticipating trajectories. Sweat trickled down her temple, but her hands remained steady. Each shot she took now required a delicate balance of timing and stealth. She had to predict the enemy's reactions while maintaining the element of surprise. One misstep could expose her position, undoing all of her careful work. The remaining enemy soldiers moved with a desperate urgency, trying to regroup and locate the invisible threat above. Observed their panic, noting the tiny details of their communication and strategy. She realized that fear had already sown chaos among them. A snap of a twig or a sudden movement could alert them, but her careful timing allowed her to strike selectively. Each shot was deliberate, no wasted effort, no unnecessary risk. His mind worked like a precise machine, anticipating movements, calculating angles, and waiting for the perfect moment to act. Hours seemed to stretch as maintained her position. She could feel her muscles cramping, yet she remained motionless, concealed by the ridge's natural cover. Sergeant Blake occasionally signaled, confirming her alignment with the team's strategy. Understood that the mission's success depended not just on her skill with the rifle, but on her ability to coordinate with her team. She felt the weight of responsibility fully, knowing that one wrong decision could compromise not only her life, but those of Blake and the civilians they were protecting. A sudden movement caught her eye, a soldier peeking from behind a boulder scanning for threats, adjusted her scope, estimating distance, wind speed, and bullet trajectory. The rifle felt like an extension of her body, precise and responsive. One squeeze, one shot, and the enemy soldier dropped silently. Exhaled, her adrenaline spiking, but she didn't relax. The remaining soldiers were desperate now, unpredictable and dangerous. Her mind cycled through possibilities, visualizing escape routes, vulnerabilities, and potential positions. Patience was key. Precision was survival. The enemy squad's panic intensified. Shots fired indiscriminately in the distance suggested their confusion. Remained unseen, a phantom among the trees, calculating every move. Relayed additional observations, and together they coordinated subtle actions that forced the enemy into predictable paths. His earlier self-doubt had evaporated, replaced by a clear-headed resolve. The rookie who had stumbled through training exercises now dictated the battlefield's tempo. Each successful engagement reinforced her confidence, her instincts sharper, her focus unwavering. Finally, only 2 enemy combatants remained, desperate to regroup and escape the ridge. Repositioned slightly, keeping her movement minimal and silent. Her breathing remained controlled, pulse steady despite exhaustion. She knew this was the final opportunity to neutralize the threat. Every calculation, the angle, the wind, the distance, was precise. One last series of shots would determine the mission's outcome. Eyes narrowed, fingers ready. In this moment, the battlefield, the chaos, and the adrenaline were secondary to the cold, focused clarity that came with being a sniper at the top of her game. Carter had grown far beyond the rookie who had arrived at Fort weeks ago. Her focus, patience, and discipline had transformed fear into power, doubt into precision. She remained concealed, alert, and ready to act until the final threat was neutralized. The rising action of this battle had tested every skill, every lesson learned, and every ounce of courage she possessed, and was ready for the climax, the moment where skill, preparation, and instinct would converge to silence the enemy completely. The two remaining enemy combatants moved cautiously, their every glance scanning the ridge, hunting for the invisible sniper who had already devastated their squad. Carter crouched behind the ridge's natural cover, rifle steady, eyes narrowed through her scope. Her pulse was calm, controlled, every muscle primed for the final moment. Months of training, countless hours of practice, and every hard lesson from boot camp and field exercises had led to this moment. This was her proving ground. She was no longer a rookie. She was the apex predator in a deadly, silent game. The enemy soldiers communicated in terse whispers, clearly aware that something had gone terribly wrong. Their formation was fractured, their confidence shattered, calculated their movements with precision, predicting their next steps before they even realized them. The wind shifted slightly, rustling leaves in a way that could betray her position. She adjusted her aim, exhaled slowly, and synchronized her breathing with the rhythm of the environment. Every detail mattered. One mistake now would undo all the skill, patience, and preparation she had cultivated. A sudden glance revealed one soldier moving toward a partially concealed boulder, intending to regroup with his partner. His focus sharpened. She adjusted her scope, accounting for distance, trajectory, and the subtle breeze that would alter the bullet's path. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The shot rang out, precise and silent thanks to the suppressor. The soldier dropped instantly. The remaining enemy froze, their panic evident. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of calculated success. This was combat distilled into moments of ultimate precision. Her mind raced through contingencies. The last soldier sought cover behind a jagged outcrop, firing sporadically in desperation. Calculations were flawless. She repositioned slightly, minimizing movement, and prepared for the final decisive shot. Her eyes locked on the target. Time seemed to slow. Every second stretched like an eternity. The rifle felt like a natural extension of her body, her instincts perfectly aligned with her training. She exhaled, squeezed the trigger, and fired. The enemy soldier fell, and with him, the threat was neutralized. For a heartbeat, the ridge was silent. Lowered her rifle slowly, scanning for any signs of life. None. Her muscles ached, her breathing was heavy, yet her mind was sharp, alert, and fully aware of the achievement. The enemy squad was completely neutralized. The mission's immediate danger had passed. Sergeant Blake approached from the shadows, his eyes locked on. He said nothing at first, simply observing, measuring, and finally giving a slight nod. In that silent acknowledgement lay approval, respect, and recognition of her transformation from uncertain rookie to lethal sniper. Private approached cautiously, awe evident in his expression. You did it," he whispered, shook her head slightly, still breathing steadily, aware that this was no time for celebration. But a quiet pride warmed her chest. The rookie who had stumbled through training, doubted by peers, and haunted by uncertainty had now mastered the battlefield's rhythm. Each decision, each shot, each calculated moment had brought her to this point. She had survived and dominated where inexperience could have meant disaster. Took a moment to observe the surrounding terrain, aware that the engagement's lessons were not over. Every sniper mission demanded vigilance even after the final shot. She coordinated with to ensure the extraction point was secure and confirmed that no lingering threats remained. The ridge, once a place of tension and fear, now felt like a testament to her growth. The rookie had become a soldier capable of precise, deadly action under pressure. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the ridge, Carter allowed herself a quiet, private reflection. She had crossed the line from inexperienced recruit to decisive, capable sniper. The enemy squad had been neutralized, lives protected, and her place in the unit. She lowered her rifle, feeling the weight of her actions, the exhaustion of focus, and the exhilaration of mastery. Had faced the climax of her first mission, and she had emerged unshakable, ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. The extraction helicopter's rotors cut through the early evening air, sending gusts of wind that rattled Carter's gear. She crouched in the rear, rifle across her lap, eyes scanning the horizon one last time. The enemy squad had been neutralized. Civilians were safe. Her first mission, the one that had haunted her in restless dreams for weeks, was complete. Yet relief was tempered by exhaustion, both physical and mental. Every shot, every calculated decision, every breath had carried immense weight. She was no longer the rookie who had arrived at Fort full of nervous energy and uncertainty. As the helicopter lifted off, his mind replayed the ridge, the silent moments of observation, the tension of waiting for the perfect shot, the adrenaline of each calculated strike. She remembered the first soldier she had taken down, the surge of responsibility that had followed, and the deliberate calm that allowed her to act with precision. She had faced fear, hesitation, and self-doubt, and overcome them. The rookie who had stumbled in training had been replaced by a sniper capable of controlling life and death, with steady hands and unwavering focus. Private, seated beside her, gave a quiet, approving nod. "You handled that better than anyone I've ever seen," he said softly. Offered a faint smile, grateful for his acknowledgement, but her mind remained on the mission, the ridge, and the lives at stake. Sergeant Blake remained quiet, his face unreadable as always. Yet when he glanced at her, the smallest nod conveyed everything words could not. Respect had been earned, not through talk or bravado, but through precision, patience, and the courage to act when it mattered most. The helicopter touched down at base just as darkness began to settle, helped unload equipment, carefully checking every weapon and piece of gear. Even now, she remained meticulous. Discipline had become instinct. The team gathered briefly to debrief, reviewing the engagement, the enemy's movements, and the outcomes. Listened attentively, absorbing every lesson, aware that even victory held its own opportunities for learning. Sergeant Blake's comments were precise, direct, and instructive, emphasizing what went well and where improvements could be made. Felt pride mingle with humility. She had excelled, yet she knew the journey was far from over. Later that night, found herself alone in the barracks. She cleaned her rifle, each movement deliberate and methodical. The silence of the room contrasted with the chaos of the ridge, yet the memories of the day pressed heavily upon her mind. She thought of the enemy soldiers, the precision required to neutralize them, and the weight of responsibility that had accompanied each shot. The adrenaline had faded, leaving exhaustion, reflection, and the quiet knowledge that she had changed irrevocably. The battlefield had tested her, and she had survived, not just physically but as a soldier and as a sniper. Picked up a small notebook and began writing a letter home. Words faltered at first, the experiences too vivid to condense. She wrote of courage, fear, and responsibility, though carefully omitting the bloodshed. She wanted her family to understand her growth, her transformation, and the seriousness of the work she had undertaken. She wrote of the team's coordination, of Sergeant Blake's guidance, and of her determination to rise beyond doubt and hesitation. In the quiet of the barracks, the rookie who had once trembled now reflected on the lessons learned in fire and shadow. By the early hours, stepped outside, rifle resting lightly on her shoulder, and gazed at the horizon. The sky was dark, speckled with stars, yet the rising sun would come again, bringing new challenges, missions, and tests of skill. She felt a quiet resolve settle in her chest. She was ready. The battlefield had forged her from uncertainty into precision, from fear into control. Carter, once a hesitant rookie, now stood as a sniper capable of shaping events with patience, focus, and unyielding courage. She had proven herself. The war outside the ridge would continue, unpredictable and unrelenting, but had changed. She understood the cost of skill, the gravity of choice, and the weight of responsibility. She would carry these lessons forward, ready for every mission, every challenge, every test. The transformation was complete, but the journey had just begun. The rookie was gone. In her place stood a soldier, a protector, a sniper, a force defined not by inexperience, but by focus, determination, and the courage to act when it mattered most.